Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joanna Earthlight and I am teaching physical science, middle school physical science to be exact. And today's topic is density. Now, this is very important to learn because density has influenced us in so many ways. And I'm going to talk about that because sometimes my student will ask me, why do we have to learn these things? So just to give them an idea, I always put real life examples in my lessons. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking about some of those. Now, to begin our lessons, we always have some questions, essential questions that I will be covering, and you need to know how to answer them by the end of this video. Now, the first one is, what is density? We're going to talk about some real life examples of density. We're going to also learn how to calculate density. And guys, remember that math is a part of science and science is a part of math. Do not separate them, okay? Now, if you look at this picture here, you'll see some balloons floating to the ceiling of a party. Why are they floating? They just put a gas called helium inside the balloons, and that caused it to float. Well, guys, just to let you know, the reason why those balloons are floating is because the particles inside of them are further apart than the particles of air. And because of that, helium is considered to be less dense than air. And because it's less dense than air, it's going to float above the air. So, what is density? Density is a physical property of matter that shows how closely packed the particles of an object are. And if we look at this picture here, we'll see this picture here where the particles are further apart. And because of that, it's considered to be low density. These are a little bit closer together, so we say it's medium density. And these that are very closely packed are high density. Now, usually, but not all the time, when the particles of an object are closely packed, it's usually heavier than the ones that are further apart. So, in layman terms, we could say people usually say density is how light or heavy something is. But in scientific terms, it's how closely packed the particles are, right? Now, we're going to look at the formula for density, or how do we calculate density. Now, we have a golf ball and a ping pong ball. If we should put the golf ball and the ping pong ball in a glass of water, what do you think will happen? The golf ball will sink to the bottom and the ping pong ball will float on top. Why do you think that will happen? It's because of the density of the different substances. So the golf ball is more dense than the water, so it floats down. It sinks down to the bottom. But the ping pong ball is less dense than the water, so it floats to the top, right? So when it's less dense, that means the particles are further apart, and that means it will float. If it's more dense, the particles are closely packed and it will sink, right? So it just depends on what is lighter or what is heavier. So in this case, with the three examples, you find the ping pong ball is the lightest, then the water, then the golf ball. So let's calculate the density of a unknown liquid. Now, our liquid has a volume of 30 milliliters. And remember, we use our graduated cylinder to measure the volume. So we have 30 milliliters, and the mass of that same liquid is 300 grams. All you have to do is plug the numbers in where the words are. So mass is 300, so we put it at the top, and volume is 30, so we put it at the bottom where volume is. So density on this side, you'll see that 300 divided by 30 is going to give you 10 grams per milliliters. Now, let's continue with this formula. If you look here, we have a triangle. And I use this as a trick to help me, or as a way to help me calculate different density, mass, and volume, right? So you could calculate anything using your triangle. And this here is a symbol here: mass, density, volume. So as you see here, you have the division sign here, and this is a multiplication sign. So if you're trying to find, let's look at the examples now. If you're going to try to find the mass of something, then all you got to do is cover the mass. Cover the mass, and then you multiply density times the volume. If you're going to find the density, we know that we cover the density. You're going to say mass divided by the volume. If you're going to be calculating the volume, you cover the volume, and then you find the mass divided by the density. And that's how you use this triangle to help you to calculate different questions. So this question here is asking you to find the mass. It says, what is the mass? So we're going to cover the mass right here. What is the mass? Or we could do it down here. It doesn't matter. What is the mass of a liquid that has a volume of 30? So we're going to put the 30 here times the density of 10. So 10 times 30. And this is how we calculate it. 10 times 30 is 300 grams. And that's how you find the mass. Let's do another example. Let's try to find the volume. So you will cover the volume, and then you have mass divided by density, right? So the mass here is 300 and the density is 10. So 300 divided by 10 is going to give you 30 milliliters. So guys, you see how easy it is to calculate the mass and the volume and the density of different liquids. Okay, let's talk about density as it relates to sports. So these are our real life examples, guys. When they're manufacturing sports equipment, they have to know about density. This dad and son went bowling. The red ball is for son, and the green ball is for dad. But you may not know it, but when you feel the balls, the red one will be less dense and the green one will be more dense. Why? Why do you think that is so? The green one will be more dense because the particles are closely packed. They are more packed than the red one. The red one is going to be less packed, right? So it's going to be further apart, so causing the ball to be lighter or less dense. Another example is density of blood components, right? You or one of your family members or friends or somebody you may know, they might have gone to the hospital and needed a blood transfusion. Now, learning the density is very important as it relates to blood transfusion. You could get the whole blood and you'll be fine. But also, the doctors could separate the blood into the different components and help to use this blood to treat like multiple people, right? And when they do this, a lot of people will benefit from that. So somebody might need the plasma, another person might need the red blood cells, another might need, different parts of the blood. So density here is very important because here you could see that the red blood cells are more dense because it sinks to the bottom, and the plasma is less dense because it goes up to the top. So the ones that are heavier or more dense, they are going to sink, and the ones that are less dense, they're going to float, right? Now, the density is also important as it relates to climatic conditions all over the world. So here, the difference in density of cool and warm ocean water can explain why currents such as the Gulf Stream flows through the ocean. And if you've never heard of the Gulf Stream, it's basically a high stream of water that starts here in the Gulf of Mexico and it travels all the way up to northern Europe. Now, this Gulf Stream is very important because it helps scientists and meteorologists to study the climatic conditions in different parts. So, the Gulf Stream will influence the climatic conditions in the Gulfs of Mexico, in parts of the Caribbean, in Florida, in Virginia, that are all located on the coast, like Eastern Virginia, that is, like, it will, the countries or the states that are close to the Atlantic Ocean, those will be influenced greatly by the Gulf Stream. And as it goes up north, you'll find that it influences a very vast majority of the climatic condition that are in Europe. Right? I would say the northwestern parts of Europe. So guys, just studying this density of water is very important. And it's also important when they study the density of air over the ocean, the warm and the cold air, because something that you must remember is that when something is hot, whether it's liquid or gas, it's going to rise, right? And that's an example of what they'll do in the hot air balloon. They push the hot air up there and it causes the balloon to rise. So hot liquid or fluids will rise, right? Hot air rises, hot water rises. So density is very important, guys, in real life. It helps to know about the climate. It helps us to know about things in the hospital, like how to treat the patients. It also helps in sports and manufacturing sport equipment. So let's look at the review questions now. What is density? Good job. Density is a physical property of matter that shows how closely packed the particles of an object are. And how do you calculate density? In this case, we have the mass of 550 grams and the volume of 25 centimeters cube. All you got to do is density is equal to mass per unit volume. So you do the mass per unit volume, you divide that, and your answer is 22 kilograms per cubic centimeters. And the last question that we will review here is basically to give some examples of real life examples as it relates to density, right? And that's very easy. We just talked about it. So we know that in the hospitals, they use it when they're trying to find out the density of the blood, of the components that are in blood. They use it when they're manufacturing the sports equipment for a vast majority of sports. We gave the one of the bowling ball there. And they also use it when they are, studying the weather and the climate across the world. So, guys, if you find any of this information helpful or useful in your classes or in life, I just want you to like, comment, share, subscribe, and thank you for watching. Have a great day.